Hey guys, real quick, is it gay to go grocery shopping? Because some male conservative talking heads seem to think so. This is a short clip from Fox News' Jesse Waters mocking a recent picture of Kamala Harris's husband joining her on a grocery run.
The New York Post caught her grocery shopping with Dougie Fresh. What kind of husband goes grocery shopping with his wife?
This clip is bizarre enough on its own, but what makes it even weirder is it's not a standalone instance of right-wing men essentially bullying other men for being good husbands and liking their wives and being a contributing member of their household, and we need to talk about it. First, I'm Hannah Cox. Welcome to my channel where I bring you my politically homeless takes on politics and culture. If you're politically homeless too, I would love it if you would subscribe and become part of my digital tent city. Also, don't forget to drop a like on this video and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of my episodes. As I mentioned at the top, this is just the latest viral moment for a very stupid trend insisting that men should not participate in cooking or even grocery shopping. I actually bookmarked this tweet about a year ago because this was the topic of conversation on Twitter all the way back then too. This guy, who's some kind of a red pill grifter, took to Twitter and said in bold, "A man shouldn't cook. Imagine being a grown-ass man who wakes up, gets dressed, and then decides he needs to go grocery shopping so that he can pre-cook his meals and be ready for the week. You not only waste time by doing the actual shopping and cooking, but you also waste time with the decisions related to it. This would include what you wear to the store, what route you're taking, what food you're buying, what form of payment you're using, what type of plastic bag you choose, what way you'll cook the food, what way you'll store it. If you're having difficulty making those kinds of decisions as a man, I think you might have a brain injury. Secondarily, the vast majority of women manage to work and do all of these activities and make all of these decisions. So what does that say about you?" He goes on to say, by the time you're actually finished doing all this and making it all, you're not only finished physically, but mentally. You've made 1,000 different micro decisions that wasted your cognitive ability, which now take away from your important decisions like running your company or operating your business. I can't really buy the idea that this guy's running a company. He sounds like a Victorian woman who needs to be prescribed 100 days by the ocean to relax his pretty mind. But it gets even worse. The post continued. Why? Just because you've seen some steroid freak on YouTube do shopping and cook, you now think it's a good idea, and you think that tracking every microcalorie yourself is needed? Just find a woman or hire a chef to cook meals for you. It's no wonder every time a rich person says they were always slumped with time and then overcame the problem, the first thing they do is say they get rid of cooking because it takes up too much physical space and cognitive space. You can't make a great business decision if you are making a decision on whether broccoli will mix good with gravy. You're just wasting time unconsciously. His grammar is atrocious here. He doesn't know the difference in your and your. And he finishes, hire a chef or get a woman. Until next time. Yikes. I don't think this guy is ever going to obtain a chef or a woman. It's really only the very, very elite amongst us that can pay to have somebody cook every single one of their meals. Like even celebrities are not doing that. That is so unrealistic. There are tons of people, tons of millionaires who run successful businesses and still manage to do basic things to keep themselves alive. Like, I am sorry to be the one to inform you that you have to participate in your own existence. On top of that, any woman these days who is signing up for a relationship with a man who can't cook, like, I don't want to be mean, but you deserve what you get. It's a huge red flag. Why do you want a man baby as a husband? Could not be me. In his comments, Lizzie said, "Fellas, is eating food gay?" Another guy weighed in and said, "Bro, with all due respect, if you need to outsource cooking anywhere below 7 figures, you are simply awful with time management. Cooking is awesome. Learning how to cook, well, might be hard, but if as a grown man, you don't know how to turn a few raw materials into a product, you have more serious problems in your head other than a lack of cognitive space." Ooh, big facts. Now, obviously, this grift is coming from the growing push in right-wing circles to market a 1950s trad life, to push back on feminism and equal partnerships, and as a whole, reassure men who are failing to launch in modern society that the problem definitely isn't them. It's these damn women who won't be your free servants anymore. You don't need to change. They do.
John from Nutley, New Jersey. Smart men grocery shop with their wife. It's called price control. Touche. Diana from Fremont, California. What kind of man goes grocery shopping with his wife? A good one. Okay, now this is getting a little out of hand here. You don't need to go grocery shopping with your wife. You should be able to exert price control from afar.
On Twitter, someone said, sometimes I think the entire trad vision of the world is just a wild extrapolation from a 1950s cigarette ad. And I responded and said, no, that's literally all it is. It's not even based on a historical understanding of the 1950s. It's literally just based on a few old ads that they've seen regurgitated online. It's so pathetic. I mean, these people have no idea what the 1950s were actually like, what the relationships were like, or why what was going on in the 1950s actually led to the feminist revolution. Hint, it was a whole lot of bad behavior by men. In regards to this conversation that's going viral on Twitter right now, Joshua Ho said, apparently the goal is to have every man think it's appropriate to be an absolute selfish ass when it comes to reestablishing traditional roles. Pretty sad, to be honest. And it is, because for these men, traditional roles aren't even just based in the understanding of who goes to work, who stays home, who does the inside housework, who does the outside housework, who spends more time with the kids, who spends more time focused on their career to get money. No, it's actually about being able to oppress women, being able to get free labor from them, and ensuring that men don't have to give an inch in actually creating equal partnerships. Like, they truly celebrate men being selfish, and then they sit there and scratch their heads and can't figure out why women keep initiating all these divorces. May Andrews on Twitter said, Waters is saying this because plenty of people don't enjoy grocery shopping, and women and feminists have been saying grocery shopping isn't inherently a woman's job. This naturally means men would have to do some grocery shopping, and those who don't want to, don't want to. So Waters and Fox News by proxy and anti-feminist are speaking for the men who don't want to and want validation in their refusal to give in to feminist claims that they should help their wives. Bingo. Nailed it. And you know what? Newsflash. A lot of women don't enjoy cooking. A lot of women also find going to the store and running errands to be drudgery, but they still do it because they are functioning grown adults who understand that, again, they have to participate in their own survival, and especially if they choose to procreate and form a partnership with another person, that they have to pull their weight. So if women understand that, why are men having such a hard time? And also, if these anti-feminist and red pill men truly believe that being a stay-at-home wife and doing this kind of labor is so much better, right? It's so much more soft. It's so much more luxurious. It's so much more desirable than having to answer to a corporate boss. Then why are they so opposed to participating in that type of labor? As someone who has grown up around true masculinity and healthy marriages, this is especially weird and cringe to me. Like, my dad loves nothing more than to go to the grocery shop. He'll fight you, actually. He wants to go to Publix. I think he likes being seen there. You know, he's the pastor of a large church in town. Going to Publix with my dad is like strolling the streets in London with the Queen of England. Like, people are just stopping him and greeting him and talking to him. It takes forever. I hate it, but he loves it. He loves to go to Publix. So the minute he hears my mom say we're out of something, he's like, I'll go. And he's out the door. He's out the door. It's his favorite thing. Do not get in that man's way of a grocery trip. And his dad was the same way. My grandfather loved to grocery shop, loved to cook. And what's so interesting to me is when I think back on the marriages I have grown up with, not only do my parents have a 40+ year marriage going strong, but my grandparents all had 50+ year marriages, and they came up and their marriages were being lived out during the time of inequality. And yet my grandfathers were never sexist assholes. They were always so participatory with their kids. They took care of their wives. They doted on them. They loved their wives. And I think that's why this has been such a culture shock for me as I've come into adulthood, to look around and see just how many men hate women, hate their wives, and refuse to actually pull their weight in relationships. It's bizarre. And it's especially bizarre for the party that claims to be like the pro-family party, which all they really mean by that is the pro-big government giving people handouts to coerce them into having kids so that they get more taxpayers party. But that's the mantra they've chosen to live under. So I'm still trying to figure out how it's pro-family to encourage men to not be equal partners, to not be good husbands. Like, how does that end up with having stronger nuclear families or more women wanting to get married and procreate with those men? I took to Twitter to call this out because I could take this in like 10 different directions. This is hardly the only instance I've seen of conservative talking heads pushing narratives that are essentially pressuring men to be crappy husbands. And I think it's so bizarre. I said, I'm not sure what they think this does for their base that is increasingly made up of single, disaffected, and lonely men. Like, I think they hate their audience because this is a recipe for staying single, lonely, and disaffected. My friend Shoshana Wiseman weighed in and say, hey fellas, is it beta to checks notes, acquire food? And I responded to her and said, super gay to hang out with your wife, according to some conservative pundits. Now, it must be said that the majority of people, even those on the right, even men on the right, do not fall in line with this way of thinking. In fact, Jesse has been getting laughed out of the water, pun intended, for this ridiculous commentary. Colin said, I just go to hang out with my wife. We wouldn't have married each other if we didn't enjoy doing mundane things together, right? Thank you. Like, how is this a novel thing? I'm obsessed with my husband. I want to go everywhere with him. I'm like a new puppy. I'm like, oh, are you going to the gas station? I'll come. Yesterday, he offered to go get me breakfast from Chick-fil-A, and I was like, no, I'll come with you. I just like being with him, and I like for him to be with me too, okay? We run errands together. We like to be together. That's the point of being married. Another Hannah online said, I wonder when they will realize that they can, in fact, just come out of the closet at any time. I need to underline this because I do think that a substantial portion of men who are pushing this kind of talking point, aside from just the grifters who are trying to get your clicks and money, I think a lot of these men are closeted. I really do. I think they hate women, they hate being around women, and they don't want to recognize that or accept it. And that's why they really want to go back to this like old school way of doing things where they didn't have to be with their wives that much. And that's, that's what was actually going on in the 1950s. A lot of these men were sneaking out for some male companionship. Richard Archie, who is actually one of the first conservative men I met when I started working in politics in Tennessee, he said, I go grocery shopping for my wife. She can't manage the walking, so I do what I have done for 52 years, all I can and need to. Everybody can laugh and point at boomers. We take care of our own as long as we can. This made my heart hurt. Like, I love it so much. What a sweetie. And yes, this is true masculinity, protecting, providing, taking care of people who are weaker than you. This is an actual partner. This is the kind of man you want to be married to 52 years down the road. But while the vast majority of people were supportive, of course, there are still that portion of men who are caught up in this quite toxic swamp that exists online for red pill conservative men. And there were those who pushed back on me. Now, I want to say I'm going to use this one guy's tweets because he just picked the wrong day. I had time today. This is the exact same kind of narrative that I see over and over in my replies and comments, and I'm sick of it. I've had enough. So he's going to be made an example of today, but he's really a stand-in for a lot of faceless men who say the same things to me behind anonymous accounts. In response to me on Twitter, he said, your economic policy positions are based, and I really enjoyed watching your early content, but what's with the recent man-hating? Personal experience or engagement for revenue? I've been needing to do this for a while. I did make a conscious decision to begin weighing in on women's issues and pushing back on red pill narratives that I saw creeping in to the political spaces I have inhabited throughout my lifetime, beginning about a year ago. And I say I made a conscious decision because nothing I have said during this time period differs in any way from what I have always believed. But I must admit to cowardice during a large portion of my career, because the reality is it's not profitable as a woman on the right to speak out for women's causes. It's not popular to be a feminist. It's not popular to call out bad behavior from men. Quite the opposite, which is why the vast majority of commentators you will come across who come out of this sphere are either making anti-women content, anti-feminist content, or red pill content, or they are staying very silent on these issues, even as there has been a drastic increase in the type of misogynistic rhetoric I have been addressing. But I chose to begin speaking out because I believe in the Billy Graham quote that says, when a strong man takes a stand, the spines of others are stiffened, because I hate bullies, because I believe I am strong enough and have built a platform and built a career where I have the security that I can speak out against these losers. And while I have been doing that, the pushback has been every bit as immense as I thought it would be. I have lost followers. I'm sure I've lost some jobs or opportunities, some money along the way, but I don't care because I know what I'm doing is right and I know what I'm doing is necessary if we want our country to move forward in the right direction. And obviously, the vast majority of the time, the people in my comments are agreeing with me, they're supporting me, they're cheering me on, and they're pushing back against bozos like this. Like, even in response to him, you can see, bizarre, you think she's the one making man-hating content instead of Waters? Another person, her, why are some men giving this terrible advice that hurts men? You, why are you hating on men? Another person, you feel singled out when she talks about bad husbands, question mark. Another person said, telling on yourself much. And another, it's not man-hating to expect men to be good husbands and decent people. Unlike the views of the boyosphere, it is based on the belief that men are capable of not being assholes. But still, it is irksome to me to see this kind of talking point repeated over and over and over. I even had it in my video last week where I was addressing a man who murdered his wife when she was trying to leave him, and the red pill men who were justifying those actions by him. And I was calling that out and exposing it for being disgusting and unhinged. And yet there were still men coming into my comments, proving my point, agreeing with his actions, and mouth breathers coming in behind them and saying that my content was anti-man instead of looking at the men justifying murder in my comments and speaking out alongside me. So I want to say this. To the men who write this garbage in my replies and in my comments, you're not going to stop me. You're not going to shut me up, and I will expose you too moving forward. You cannot point to one man-hating thing I've ever said. You can't point to any single piece of content I've made bashing all men, because I don't hate men and I don't make such content. I do make posts calling out abhorrent behavior by bad men, demanding accountability in those instances, and exposing the grifters who prop up and excuse that behavior. I also call out people who make anti-women content. And if that bothers you or makes you feel attacked or somehow strikes you as anti-man, I think you should examine that, because we all see you clearly. The oddest thing to me is when these kinds of haters in my comments try to tie my outspoken advocacy for women to getting married, okay? I actually see this kind of thing a lot where they realize it was about a year ago that I got married and about a year ago that I started making this kind of content. And so in their minds, I'm making anti-male content now because I got married and I hate my husband. Like, these people truly are mouth breathers. Here he is doing it. After I clocked him the first time, he said, "It doesn't bother me personally. I simply preferred reading your other content about policy issues. Men and women have undesirable traits and behaviors, some worse than others. I know you're recently married and say you're happy in that. Congratulations, your feed has changed." I'm sure getting married to my husband did make a difference in my choice to step into this space, because I think marrying him made me bold enough and courageous enough to speak out. I wasn't worried about other men coming for my throat, as I knew would happen if I chose to speak out in this way. I had the assuredness of having a good man behind me. So, like, I don't care what these yokos have to say about me. Like, they can't even register, okay? You're a peon. My husband is a great man who stands up for women, who loves women, and you are a peon who is constantly trying to distract from those who call out men who hurt women. You're not in the same category. I said that to him publicly. I said, probably getting married to a good man has made me braver and bolder, and speaking out against the corrupt ones and being surrounded by good men makes me so much less tolerant of male abuse and bad behavior when it's in front of me. Weird it doesn't have the same effect on you. But if you'd rather look away from those problems and don't care about the harmful behavior of some people towards others, we are simply not the same. As I said, it's actually deeply unpopular to do what I'm doing on the right, and I knew that before I got into it. I'm not stupid. I've been in these circles my entire life. Wise people would stop and ask themselves why that is. Why is making pro-women content dangerous on the right? Why is it unpopular? Why will it get you canceled? Why is calling out bad behavior by men something that will get you completely ostracized in those same circles? But if you think backlash or not being popular is going to stop me, you haven't followed me very long. I didn't get into this game for that reason. I'm not here because of money. I'm not here for clicks. I'm not here because I even like being in the public eye. I increasingly don't. I increasingly fantasize about buying an Ace Hardware and doing things with my hands again and never looking at the internet all of my days. No, I do this because I care about what happens to this country, because I know the formula for success, and because I hate injustice. And because of that, I've never folded on a single thing. I've never compromised my principles in this game once. I have withstood having this kind of career since 2016, while Trump and nationalism has completely overtaken all of the sectors that used to be friendly to me. And I have found a way to make it despite all odds. So you're not going to bully me into shutting up. You picked the wrong girl. And make no mistake, to the men who do this, who try to bully me into silence or bully other women into silence, I'm clocking you. There's a reason why, when I say this behavior from male is bad and it needs to stop, that most men, good men, say, yeah, you're right, that's crazy. While only a small subset of you say, why are you anti-man? Like, just look at this guy's responses to me. It just wasn't like registering to him. He said, I imagine you could point out just as many bad behaviors among women in relationships if you wanted. Again, I enjoy the libertarian policy content rather than personal drama, but you've instead turned my query about content into some attack on my character as if I condone bad behaviors. You are trying to condone bad behaviors by insisting that I stop talking about them and by saying you don't like my content anymore when I do, and by trying to reduce my content and my advocacy around these issues into personal drama, which it's not. I don't have any personal drama with any of these people. I am talking about societal movements that are important, that have an impact on our daily lives. And if you don't understand how society and culture eventually impacts politics, then I think you're too stupid to be trying to weigh in on politics. Like, this is basic policy 101 stuff. Whether or not it is subconscious or not, trying to condone this bad behavior is exactly what these kinds of men are trying to do when they make posts like this. They label calling out bad behavior by men or pushing back on misogyny as being anti-male. Instead of, I don't know, willingly joining me and rightfully condemning these kinds of messages and these kinds of behaviors, they try to pressure me to stop speaking out about them at all. And then they turn to whataboutism when this is correctly called out and ask why I don't spend time finding bad women to call out. I mean, number one, again, that's what the vast majority of the right-wing ecosystem is currently doing. But number two, I do call out bad behavior from women. My entire show yesterday was doing just that, in fact. But that doesn't stand out to these types because taking bad women to task doesn't trigger them. They're not out here calling me anti-woman for discussing it. And they're not out here asking me, like, what about the men who do the same thing? The truth is that the right-wing spaces have been attracting a growing number of men, particularly young men, because they are struggling. And the profitable thing to do right now is to dunk on women and coddle those men by pushing a victim mentality that teaches them that women are the cause of all of their problems. Like, this kind of content, these messages, seeing much, much larger figureheads than me saying these things. It's all over. It's all I can see in my algorithms and my newsfeed. And I know men see it because you know what I see is them agreeing with it, them interacting with it. I don't see them calling these creators out or saying that these narratives are anti-women, even though the vast majority of the time that content actually is misogynistic. In a last-ditch attempt to try to justify his very weird tantrum he was having in my comments, this guy then tried to say that he doesn't personally listen to Andrew Tate or Sean Hannity anymore. So if you're not listening to it, it's not a relevant point of conversation. Do you jump in the comment section of anything else that people are talking about that you don't currently listen to and aren't partaking in with this kind of passion and fervor? I doubt it. Again, you don't want me talking about this behavior because you don't want it checked. There are millions of people who are being influenced by this kind of content and that of seedy men, particularly young boys, and especially young boys who are now on the right. That has a tremendous impact on our society, on our relationships, on our economy, and ultimately on our political system. And I just think it's so odd that the people who lack the very basic ability to identify problems where they begin and have a little bit of forethought to see where it might lead are always the people trying to silence those who do get it. Why are you spending your time fighting this problem I don't personally care about? The better question is, why are you pressed that somebody is spending their time covering something you don't care about? But furthermore, maybe they're doing it because they have the wisdom and foresight and political strategy skills to recognize something flying over your head. These movements and narratives are bad for the men who are being sucked in by them on an individual level, and they are bad for everyone else in proximity. So you certainly aren't pro-male if you stand by as it happens and as the young males get indoctrinated by it. Those mentalities also increase anti-women attitudes and actions, which, newsflash, are still a huge problem. Violence against women is still a massive, massive problem in society, particularly in the context of relationships. And that's something good men tend to care about. And yet me standing up to these bullies and losers strikes you as anti-man, and you're spending your time trying to get me to shut up. But don't worry, you're not the bad guy. I don't know why I have to say this, but good men care about what happens to both young boys and women in our society. They care about what happens to other people. They care about individuals. In reality, the people who stand by while others are doing bad things or who try to silence the people who are pushing back are also bad guys. This kind of mentality from males is not masculine. It's not leadership. It's not brave. It's just beta. And there's too much of it. And that void that's been left by men with this mentality has largely been filled by women who are willing to speak up and fight back, even at personal cost to themselves. So the least you can do is get out of the way of true leadership and courage. So to the good men who are pushing back on this nonsense, I want to thank you for your leadership, for your wisdom, and for your actual masculinity. And to the women who are maybe scared to speak out on it because they are worried about this kind of reaction from beta men, I implore you to be emboldened. We are in a new age of equality for the first time in history. So obviously there are some growing pains. And we have, I think, an exciting and important task at hand to develop new ways of creating value for one another, of living in harmony, of building strong marriages built on partnership. All of this should invigorate you. But if it scares you or it makes you angry, you need to seek help for that. Personally, I'm not letting these knuckle draggers take us backwards. All right, guys, I hope you liked the episode. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to my channel if you haven't. If you want even more content, you can follow me on Twitter, TikTok, or Instagram.